Part 7. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 61. How to diagnose ruptured internal organs. A whole book could be written on this issue if we really study it in detail. X-ray, ultrasound, CT, abdominal puncture, and if corrected, laparotomy. There are countless methods available clinically, and there are countless tools to assist doctors in diagnosis. But now, in another world, facing this old healer, Greet can only answer. Physical examination. How to check? Look carefully. Abdominal physical examination. The most basic thing is to press. Different positions correspond to different internal organs, the left upper abdomen. Greet gushed. The white-haired old man bent over and listened intently, wishing he could take a note and write it down immediately. Greet deliberately slowed down to let him see more clearly, and explained while operating. When palpating the liver, the 3 fingers of the right hand should be brought together, the metacarpophalangeal joints should be straightened, the ends of the index finger and middle finger should be parallel to the costal margin, and placed on the right side of the umbilical cord. Exhale, inhale. Well, there is no obvious pain, let's check the spleen next. The old man nodded while listening, his eyes focused and his lips moving slightly, as if he was reciting the lecture. Greet checked it all at once. Preliminary judgment shows that there is no obvious visceral rupture. The shape of the spine is normal, with no obvious curvature or deformation. There is no obvious trauma to the head, no hematoma, left arm, right arm. Very good, very good. Apart from the damage to the internal organs that cannot be checked for the time being and the explosion can only wait for him to explode, the only thing that needs to be dealt with is the open fracture of the left leg. Gretel was greatly excited. He moved with his support on the ground, touched the skin on the upper and lower ends of the fracture, and stood up. Okay, now only the left leg needs treatment. He turned to look at the old man. Seeing the man with flying white hair, hale and hearty, and arms so thick that he could beat a bear to death, my heart moved and I casually cast a detection magic. Oops! Greet screamed. Bright, so bright. Especially the stick in the old man's hand, in the meditative field of vision, was as bright as a 500-watt high-pressure sodium lamp. Gretel reflexively raised his hands to cover his eyes. As soon as he raised his hand, he suddenly froze, threw himself in front of the oak staff, and covered it with his trembling palm. Can see. Can see. Through the magic light emitted by the wooden staff, the bones on the palms and fingers are clearly visible. He finally found it. He finally found the mutated version of detection magic, X-ray technology. Gretel stared at his palm blankly. If he had seen this visual effect in his previous life, he would have run as fast as he could. No one would want to take X-rays for fun. But now, when he looked at the magic aura penetrating his palm, it was like he was seeing the most precious treasure. This is an alien world where nothing matters. For surgeons, X-rays are worth their weight in gold. The white-haired old man looked at Gretel with a smile. He took a step back, and Greet took a step forward. He turned the oak staff in one direction, and Gretel followed suit, paying attention to the injured who he didn't step on. Until the detection of magic expires and the magic aura disappears, Gretel suddenly wakes up. Are you the little guy who cured Knight Baron? The old man waved his oak staff and interrupted him. I heard that your healing skills are somewhat special. Maybe your healing skills are special, Gretel cursed. On the surface, he still had to smile. Old sir, I would like to ask for advice on how to treat this kind of fracture. Greet lowered his head and pointed at the pale injured person on the ground. Will it be difficult to align the bones? Will I be lame after treatment? The old man was moved. He pondered for a moment. It is indeed difficult. Experienced healers are fine, but novices can heal wounds, but they often fail to target the bones. What, Do you have a way? I have a solution. Gretel's eyes were sharp. They returned to the village with the wounded. Coincidentally, the injured person was from Tyr village. Greet escorted the injured person to visit the village, so that nothing was wasted. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the village, the old, weak and young children who had not gone out to work in the fields, as well as the strong laborers who had rushed back after getting the news, rushed up and greeted the old man one after another. Elder! Elder, you are here. Elder, thank you for saving Lorraine. The servant of the mage tower who accompanied Gretel looked at him frequently. Greet pretended not to notice, feeling at ease and shrinking back. Instead, the white-haired old man reached out and picked him up. You were wrong this time. This kid saved the person, you should thank him. Several hands covered with mud immediately reached out to Gretel, wanting to express their gratitude. Gretel swooped back to the old man. I have to have surgery later. Don't touch me with your dirty hands. He grasped the old man's collar tightly. Let's save people quickly. Find a big, clean house and carry the patient in. Boil water. Liquor. Soap. Knife. Hook. The largest and cleanest house in the village is naturally the village chief's home. When the things were delivered, Greet learned his lesson and drove out all the villagers who were watching, so that no one would make a fuss around them. After washing his hands, he took the hook of the knife and threw a spell on it. This is... The old man's eyes lit up, a magic trick. Yes, it is used as a cleaning technique. Gretel's eyes sparkled. To say that this skill is really easy to use, it lasts for 1 hour and can clean something within 1 cubic foot every second. Used to wash flasks, test tubes, or clean surgical instruments, it is a unique tool. I just don't know how effective the sterilization is. I'll do a bacterial culture test some other time to see. Gretel picked up the sharp knife and observed it for a moment, then slashed it. Before the white-haired old man had time to be surprised, Greet's sword flew and cut out the blood vessels. As soon as he raised his hand, a shimmering translucent clip appeared in the air, and the two sides closed together, immediately clamping the somewhat shriveled blood vessel. Mage's hand, the old man was surprised for the second time. You actually used the mage's hand like this? What are you doing? Clamp the blood vessels. Okay, the tourniquet on the injured leg can be loosened. Gretel answered matter-of-factly. He clapped his hands, put down the sharp knife, washed it with a clean white cloth dipped in water, and tried to clean the wound as much as possible, then smiled at the old man. Next, I'm going to ask for your help. What do you want me to do? The old man patted his chest generously. Greet nodded his thanks. Put your wooden stick behind the injured leg. Find 2 people to hold both sides of the injured leg. When I say pull, just pull it to both sides. When I say it's okay to stop, please follow my instructions and align the bones. You won't pick it up incorrectly. Absolutely not, Gretel said confidently. Yes, I have a spell that allows me to see what the bones look like inside the flesh. 1, 2, 3, pull. Creaking, the muscles were stretched hard, making an extremely unpleasant sound. Gretel raced against time to activate the detection magic. In his meditation vision, dazzling white light penetrated the muscles, illuminating the bent, cracked, and broken bones. Greet stared at the broken part closely. Pull again, okay, stop. He rushed forward, held the broken end with both hands, and tried to push it to the normal position. Ouch, so heavy. I am not an orthopedic surgeon. Little Gretel, why am I surrounded by strong men and I am the weakest one? It's Friday and it's the end of the month. Please give me the tickets you have saved as soon as possible. Please recommend, please collect, please invest, please give me a monthly ticket. Request a guaranteed monthly pass for next month in advance. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 62. Bone setting. Gretel decided not to work hard. In fact, if he really grits his teeth and gives it a try, he may not be able to push it away. After all, the original person is also a first-level warrior. In terms of strength and combat effectiveness, he is still much stronger than civilians. But why? I am a mage. I am an elegant mage. I have changed my profession, it is no longer a warrior or a physics profession. You should wave your staff and recite the incantation. Anything that weighs more than 5 pounds and cannot be lifted by the mage's hands must be handed over to others. He took a step back, gave up his position, and motioned to the white-haired old man to hold the broken ends on both sides. There is such a big guy who can carry a person with one hand and can run like flying. Why do you need me to help? The magic aura shines brightly. Gretel put his hands on the old man's hands, gently pushed and pulled, guiding the old man to exert force, and kept giving orders. A little forward, a little further, okay, take your right hand back, no, go back a little, okay. Aim. Slowly let it get closer, and then get closer. Stop. Wait. The muscles in the old man's arms tensed quietly. He turned his face and gave Gretel a strange look. Greet smiled at him sarcastically. The duration of detecting magic is over. This thing is also too short. Every time a spell is cast, it can only last for 1 minute/level depending on the level of the mage. Greet is currently a mage apprentice and is considered level 0.5. He releases detection magic once, which can only last for 30 seconds. Gretel took a few breaths, closed his eyes and concentrated, and cast the spell again. The magic aura lit up again, illuminating the broken bones in the meditation field of vision, guiding the direction of bone setting. Greet pushed and pulled with his hands and gave orders with his mouth. The white-haired old man also cooperated very well. Finally, before the end of another 30 seconds, the broken tibia and fibula were completely reset. All right. Greet let go of his hand and fell to the ground with a plop. The consequences of casting 4 magic spells in a short period of time finally appeared, his forehead swelled, his head buzzed, and his temples throbbed with pain. Gretel closed his eyes and was resting by himself, when he heard the old man say in surprise. It's absolutely perfect, how did you do it? I can see, with magic. Greet replied weakly. He immediately heard the next question, what's next? What to do? Greet really wants to say, throw away the healing skills and stop bothering me. But as the patient lies there, the more delicate the treatment, the better the prognosis will be. He couldn't help but struggle to take command. Greet opened his eyes, struggled to sit up, and looked around. Etc. Fortunately, the duration of the mage's hand has not ended yet. Greet tried hard to keep his spirits up and continued to manipulate the spell. In a moment, the large blood vessels on both sides were slowly pulled out and pulled together. Gretel turned his head and pursed his lips at the white-haired old man. Then, connect these 2 blood vessels. Hey, what are you? The old man looked surprised. He leaned down and took a closer look, and even stretched out his hand to touch. Mage's hand? Use it like this. Yes, Gretel smiled slightly, showing his modesty. This is convenient and clean. Tissue tweezers should be carried with you and sterilized in advance. The old man repeated convenient and clean in a low voice several times and pointed his finger. A white light flew out from the fingertips and landed on the blood vessels. The millimeter diameter blood vessels healed immediately. Gretel let go of the mage's hand, and soon, bright red blood rushed through. That's it, I can't handle my nerves or anything. Greet secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He continued to give instructions, connect the bones inside, yes, be more precise with the treatment. Connect the bones first, and let me see, It's no problem. Wait, let me sort out the muscles. The hand of the mage. Superior. The translucent, tangible hands were raised again, combing the muscles carefully. The damaged muscles that were pierced by bone stubble were combed out individually. Gretel and the white-haired old man cooperated tacitly. He separated one strip and the old man threw a healing spell. After combing everything, Gretel closed his eyes and his waist collapsed again. Okay, all done. Without him having to say anything, the old man threw another white light over to heal the damaged skin. As he stroked his injured leg with his hands, pressing left and right, he became more and more surprised. The cost of healing has been reduced by half. How did you do that? Manual bone setting, disassembly tasks. Gretel's voice became smaller and smaller, his words stammered, and he looked like he was about to fall asleep at any moment. Even as he was on the verge of collapse, he did not forget to say, "Remember to throw some healing spells on his chest and abdomen. If he fell from such a high place, I'm worried that his internal organs will be damaged. Many things can't be revealed by physical examination alone." The old man did as he was told. After throwing down a few treatments, the patient became energetic and sat up without any support. As soon as his legs hit the ground, he screamed. "Ah!" Gretel was frightened and woke up on the spot. He pounced forward, and with the strength of a mere first-class soldier, he actually got in front of the old man, grabbed the wounded man, and checked him up and down. After a moment he breathed a sigh of relief. "It's nothing serious. It's just an injury on the foot. It's most likely a fracture of the calcaneus, just throw in a healing spell." "Another fracture?" The old man's hand that released the healing technique stopped. "Can you still see the broken bones?" Greet had a bitter look on his face. He raised his head and looked at the old man weakly. "The spell is used up. Greet's current mental power can release 5 0-level magics a day, and he has used them all just now, 3 times of mutant X-ray spells to detect magic, 1 time of mage's hand, and 1 time of magic tricks. Wanting to do another one, his only solution at the moment. Wait for tomorrow. Oh, and I have to sleep for 8 hours that night. So being a mage is really not a profession that you can stay up late at? Thank God, 996 is no longer needed. Run out." A smile flashed in the old man's eyes. According to the previous news, this young man is still a mage apprentice, and has just become a mage apprentice. After the meeting, the magic fluctuated 5 times in a row. Sure enough, the spell was used up and could no longer be released. He pulled a small bottle from his belt. After thinking for a while, he put it back, reached into his arms, took out another one, and handed it to Gretel. "Just a drop will do. A small bottle that is as long as your index finger and as thick as your thumb." Gretel took it in his hand and looked at it. The mouth of the bottle was plugged with a cork, and the potion inside was flowing brightly, and the green color was very beautiful. "But this is green. The life potion is red, the magic potion is blue, what is your green one? Isn't it poison?" He looked at the old man for help, but got no answer. "Uncork the bottle, flick the air from the mouth of the bottle with your palm, and smell it carefully." A cool breath rushed over, making Gretel's nose sore and he almost sneezed. "It doesn't seem like it's poison. Moreover, my mind seems to be a little fresher." Gretel's eyes lit up. Following the old man's instructions, he carefully leaned over the bottle and tried to drink only 1 drop. "Wouldn't you give me a dropper for such a small dose? Just pour it into your mouth like this, and you can easily finish it all in 1 gulp." A drop of coolness exploded on the tip of the tongue and expanded rapidly. Fills the mouth, rushes up the nasal cavity, and spreads to the brain. Greet shuddered, and the fatigue and dizziness after casting the spell were instantly washed away. "I can do it again." He jumped up, hold his feet, "Get ready, I'll cast the spell." In the meditative environment, The bright magical light once again shines. Greet cooperated with the old man to reset the injured Calcaneus and the treatment was completed. The injured and his family were grateful, but the old man didn't care at all. He pulled Greet around and escaped from the crowd. Seeing that Gretel was very cooperative and followed him to escape, the old man patted his shoulder with satisfaction and asked with a smile. "Are you the child who was inspired by the god of nature? I received the news and will test the waters next week. Please don't keep it up, come and read every day, and help me advance and test the waters, thank you. And as usual, I ask for collections, recommendations, book reviews, I ask for monthly tickets, it's May 1st, please give me your guaranteed monthly tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 63. Greet's smile immediately froze. I go. I #% at. Lying feels good for a while, but the lie will go to the crematorium. Why did I tell such a lie then? Why did I just recommend it to the natural gods? He looked carefully at the old man's clothes. Wearing dark brown robes and an oak staff, he has a strong build and a kind demeanor. No matter how you look at it, he looks like a servant of the god of nature. The villagers also called him Elder. That's the leader of the cult. He ran into the hands of the big boss. What to do? Would it be considered blasphemous? Will he be burned to death? Or not to burn, but to be killed by bears, wild boars, leopards, etc., and buried under the oak tree? Gretel opened his mouth to defend himself, but no words came out. The old man was still looking at him with a smile, like an old bear lying in the distance observing the hive. At first glance, it seemed to be completely harmless, that's all. Greet's back was covered in cold sweat. Run away, defend, deny, countless thoughts whirled around in his mind, but finally he gritted his teeth and simply told the truth. I was bragging. He recounted the situation verbatim. Uncle Karen was seriously injured. He miraculously understood the healing technique. In order not to worry his colleagues, he pretended to be inspired by the gods. At that time, I just felt that the god of nature was relatively noble, and the cult was easy to talk to. The old man's eyes opened wider and wider, looking at Gretel as if he was looking at something incredible. He probably didn't expect someone to have such an open mind. Looking at it, he suddenly raised his head and laughed. Hey, is it so funny? The little tongue has seen it. Greet moved uneasily. Oops, it seems that although the elder is in a better mood and may not pursue him to death, but it seems that it will become a dark history. The old man was still looking down at him, smiling like a bear that had eaten its fill of honey and heard that the bees were willing to provide it regularly. The sun shone from behind him, casting a huge shadow on Gretel, which was no less impressive than the shadow of the oak tree next to him. Gretel quietly took a step back, then took another step back. With a click, an acorn cracked under his heel. A few days ago, I heard that there was such a mage boy who actually claimed to have received divine enlightenment. The old man suddenly spoke. Greet felt something in her heart and listened to him slowly say. The way of spreading the news is a bit strange, as if it was deliberately meant to be heard by me, but it didn't want me to know who sent it. After asking about it for a few days, I wanted to come to the Mage Tower to ask Gearman. People go directly to Master Gearman. Well, the elders of the local campus of the Church of Nature are indeed qualified to go directly to the host of the Mage Tower. Gretel shivered and asked in a low voice. That. There was a tap on the shoulder, interrupting the conversation. The old man stared into Gretel's eyes, as if he wanted to see into his heart, and spoke in a deep voice. I saw you on the road. I saw that you were willing to help the injured poor, doing your best, and not being greedy for fame and fortune afterwards. Such a character is in line with the teachings of our God. Then, I want to ask you, are you willing to learn the teachings of the God of nature and understand his grace? This. Gretel was stunned. He stared at the white-haired old man across from him with wide eyes, almost unable to believe his ears. Such a good thing? Instead of beating him, scolding him, or burning him on the pyre, you want to absorb him into the cult. What about faith? What about reverence for God? It can't be fake, right? He replied subconsciously, I don't know your identity yet. Oh, haha, I forgot to introduce myself. The old man raised his head and smiled. The oak staff struck the dirt for a moment. Greet's eyelids twitched as he seemed to see the grass secretly growing next to him. I am Erwin Wilkinson, the elder of the local order of the God of Nature. You can call me Erwin. How about it, young man, are you willing to learn from me? But, why? Because you are a good healer. You are capable and willing to help the poor. Elder Erwin replied seriously, your actions are consistent with the purpose of the order. From this point of view, you are naturally our partner. The old man spoke slowly, with a sincere look on his face, and it seemed that every word came from the bottom of his heart. Gretel was still a little worried and couldn't help but ask more. But what about faith? Belief? Elder Erwin couldn't help but smile. He murmured these two extremely serious and heavy words, and looked at Gretel up and down. The more he looked, the more satisfied he became. After thinking for a while, he turned around and took a few steps with his hands behind his back, calling to Gretel. Come. Gretel quickly followed. Elder Erwin walked all the way up the hillside, looking at the smoke from the village not far away, and suddenly asked Greet. What do you believe in? What is the power that allows you to gather your will and activate healing techniques? Gretel was silent for a moment. He stood next to Elder Erwin, looking at the children running around in the village, looking at the old man who was hunched over at work, looking at the human fireworks at his feet, and whispered. Health depends on life, life depends on it. What? Those who taught us medicine told us, Greet said slowly. In this distant alien world, when all his teachers and colleagues were far away from each other, retelling the teachings and vows made back then made his heart surge. They said that our mission is to save the lives of patients and take care of their health. Patients entrust their lives to us, and their health depends on us, so we must not let down this mission no matter what. These teachings and vows are too solemn and serious. Elder Erwin chewed carefully and couldn't help but feel slightly lost in thought. He was silent for a long time. What kind of group of people would make such an oath and teach disciples with such a purpose? After a long time, he came back to his senses and spoke softly. Then, will you claim that you have received divine inspiration from my God and convey his oracle? Deliver an oracle. Greet shuddered. A picture flashed in his mind. He was jumping around like a giant jumper, fell to the ground and twitched, his mouth was crooked and his eyes were squinting, and then he jumped up and declared that he was some kind of heavenly father and brother, and started to speak in a strange voice. Absolutely not. Gretel shook his head desperately. I won't. I absolutely won't. Elder Erwin laughed. Although he didn't know what Gretel was thinking, this explosive reaction, apart from being determined, was actually a little cute. He smiled and stretched out his hand to pat Gretel silently, then said seriously. Your beliefs and principles do not conflict with those of the order. So, are you willing to understand the teachings and graces of the God of Nature? If you find it acceptable, join us and let us learn your treatment methods. I am very willing to. Thanks to Etkutan Shari for the 100 starting coins. Happy May Day to everyone. The author is still revising the manuscript crazily. The promotion is coming soon. Please watch it every day and don't keep it up. Reading is very important to test whether you can advance through PK. Please, please. Please collect it, recommended, book reviews, please give me a guaranteed monthly ticket, please support me in any way. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 64. In this way, Gretel slipped into No, joined the Order of the God of Nature, and became a disciple of Elder Irwin. Of course, the so-called disciples just changed their names verbally. No ceremony was held, and no guests were invited to pay homage. Gretel had no intention of showing off, and Elder Irwin was a mature man, so he sensed something was wrong from the news about the divine enlightener. He just let Greet go back that day, and came to the Mage Tower alone the next day, visited Master Gearman and expressed his intention. What? You want to accept Gretel as a disciple? Master Gearman was so surprised that his eyes almost popped out. He leaned forward, and a swimming ring formed in his red robe. Fortunately, there are no buttons on the robe, otherwise, a few of them would fall apart immediately. I know he's a healer, but you won't accept him as your disciple personally, right? Hey, this little guy is quite interesting. Elder Irwin smiled so hard that his white eyebrows twitched. He played 2 new tricks with new tricks. You haven't seen them before, have you? Don't tell me, these 2 new tricks are quite useful in treatment. Master Gearman? Are you learning magic just for healing? How much you love healing. You like healing, you want to be a priest, why are you going to the Mage Tower to study? Having said that, Master Gearman also became curious and asked Greet to demonstrate it. The mage's hand didn't arouse much interest in the mage. In his words, it's just a relatively fine control. However, the detection of magic made his eyes shine. In the vision of meditation, Greet's palm covering the oak staff, the phalanges, metacarpal bones, and carpal bones, one by one, are clearly visible. It really works. Master Herman stood up, walked to the oak staff, and cast the spell himself. The bright magical aura unfolded in the meditative field of vision. Master Gearman stretched out his hand, covered it, and observed. I can't see clearly. Master Gearman frowned. In his meditation field of vision, the magical aura could not penetrate his skin at all, only illuminating the edges of his fingers a little. The visual effect is similar to when you put your palms together and look at the sun under the scorching sun. I can't see clearly either. Elder Irwin stood side by side with him, extending his hand exactly the same. I tried this magic overnight last night, using myself and others in the order. The conclusion is that only those who are 5 levels lower than me can see clearly with this staff. Level 5, Master Gearman was moved. Elder Irwin's oak staff has been with him through thick and thin for decades, and has been nourished by its own energy. The natural god cult is unique in its ability to cultivate extraordinary items. This kind of portable staff can almost be considered to be of the same level as the person by default. He said that it takes 5 levels lower to see clearly. Doesn't that mean that a magic item of level 5 or above is required for the aura to shine through the bones of civilians, and most of the mage apprentices? But let alone civilians, even a mage apprentice can only touch high-level magic items a few times in his life. Such magic, do you think it's useful? It works, Elder Irwin nodded, waving his white beard and smiling happily. It can help a lot of people. Hey, after talking for so long, you still haven't said whether you agree or not. Master Gearman. It's as if I don't agree to you accepting disciples, it's really useful. Having said that, given Elder Irwin's strength and the consistently good relationship between the natural gods and the Magic Council, Master Gearman could not find any reason not to agree. Not only did he agree, he also planned to make things nicer, for example, give him a gift. Gretel, he called seriously. Since you have created this new use of magic, summarize it and write a paper. The Archmage of the Magic Council will come soon. It is best to publish this paper. Even if it fails, it can still be published in front of the Archmage. Extra points. Gretel, what? Paper. Is there a paper in this world? Where will I send my paper after I finish writing it? Is there a journal, is there is there an impact factor evaluation? Gretel opened his mouth and swallowed hard. Master Herman thought he didn't know what a thesis was. After thinking about it for a while, he suddenly said, "Oh, I forgot that you haven't finished reading the book on the bottom floor. There is it in the living room on the second floor. Go back later and read it yourself. If you don't know how to write, ask Elliot, or ask me directly." Ken. Gretel. No need, it's just a paper. I can write. I wrote a lot in my previous life. And, why did I work so hard to write my thesis in my previous life, but in another world, I still have to find time to write my thesis? He lowered his head silently and shed tears of sympathy for himself. Beside him, Elder Irwin was already happy. A mage apprentice writes a thesis? Little Gretel, the mage thinks highly of you. Come on, I will tell you the results of several attempts. Let's write a beautiful one. Gehrman, I will go and talk to the little one. The guy is here. Elder Irwin, Master Gehrman jumped up. You are a distinguished guest. Who lives where in the Mage Tower? The apprentices live on the second floor, the official mage lives on the third floor, and the master of the Mage Tower, as well as the distinguished guests, live on the fifth floor. If you live on the second floor, others won't say that you are informal, they will only say that you are ignorant and don't even understand the rules of hospitality. Hush, keep it secret, keep it secret. Elder Irwin walked over with a smile and hooked the mage's neck. You don't know, this little guy, someone is going to deal with him. The more secret I come, the better. Rustling, rustling. As he whispered, Master Gehrman's face became more and more solemn. As for Elder Irwin, after releasing the breaking news, he carried Gretel downstairs nonchalantly. Right. I'll watch you write. Elder, I haven't seen what the paper looks like. 5 minutes later, Gretel was sitting in the hall on the second floor of the Mage Tower, his eyes widening. Title, author's name, abstract, keywords. This is the way he is used to writing papers. Why do the papers here look like this? Have any time travelers come to this world? If there are time travelers who have come here, why do they still look so barbaric and ignorant? Even the magic is caused by sparks, blazing fireballs, and fireballs all the way up. Gretel's imagination is endless. Elder Irwin had already knocked on the table. Quick. Get a pen and write down what I said. Okay, Greet jumped up and ran to get it. Case. Fresh case. Fresh clinical cases. When it comes to writing papers, in addition to theoretical basis and data derivation, the most missing thing is detailed cases. There is no need for him to go everywhere to find people and try hard with his pitiful number of 5 spells a day. Very good. Gretel raised his head. Elder, do you want me to be the joint first author? Ouch. If you don't agree, don't hit me. Elder Irwin lived in the single room of the mage apprentices on the second floor of the Mage Tower for several days. In the past few days, the old man had crammed into Greet the doctrines, prayers, methods of using magic, and all the knowledge a trainee priest should know. Gretel learned to death. Of course, the old man was not much better. Greet recited doctrines, prayers, and the history of the deistic church. When he was dizzy, when he turned around, the old man looked at the diagram of the human body that he had drawn. Her hair is messy, her eyebrows are knotted, and her eyes are straight. The left ventricle is connected to the aorta, the right ventricle is connected to the pulmonary artery, the left atrium is connected to the pulmonary veins, the right atrium is connected to the superior and inferior vena cava, the left ventricle. Greet watched him read it 3 times in a row, stretched out his hand, pressed it on the paper with his fingers spread apart. Where does the left atrium connect? The old man looked at him blankly, like an old bear that had gotten up from hibernation and hadn't noticed that the hive next door was gone. Gretel silently recited the words for him. What kind of plum is ma? Come on. Let's die together. I feel like I can memorize what you taught me in half a month. What you have to memorize, hey, I studied it for 7 years. Thanks to a cherry. Gray for the 100 starting coins. This afternoon we will start the test push, which lasts for 1 week. Please come and read it every day. It is very important to follow up on the test push to advance. Please please. If you advance, it will be released later, and you can read more free chapters, so please help me. Please collect, recommend, monthly pass, book review, please guarantee monthly pass. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 65. The old man studied hard in the Mage Tower for 3 days and then quietly slipped away, carrying the teaching materials given by Gretel, and disappeared without a trace. Nearly half a month later, Gretel appeared and took the test again. After making sure that he passed the test, he dragged him out by his collar. Hey, where are we going? Greet struggled as he walked. It's getting dark. The religious group is meeting. The old man loosened his hand and stopped holding him by the collar, instead holding it under his armpit. Greet was almost half floated by his support, and walked forward without touching his feet. At the same time, he listened to the old man's scolding. The sect has a regular meeting every month on the day when the new moon rises. Have you memorized the brochure I gave you? Today happens to be the new moon. I will take you to get to know them. If anything happens in the future, everyone will also, so we can help each other. Most of the meeting places of the god of nature cult are on hills that are neither high nor short. Greet was led by Elder Irwin and hurried until the sun was setting and the new moon was rising, only to hear him say, "We're here." As soon as his hand was released, Greet sank down and landed on his feet. Looking around, I saw that I was standing on the mountainside, surrounded by dense forests, all of which were tall and short oak trees. The tired bird returning to the nest gave a long and short cry, and I didn't know what species it was. The fallen leaves were deep in the ground, and the grass was covered with fine grass. It looked like no one had been there for hundreds of years. Hey, Greet said anxiously, where are we? There's no road here. Go to the top of the mountain. Walk on your own. Elder Irwin had already begun to climb up the mountain. He was so agile that he didn't even need an oak staff to support him. Gretel had no choice but to stumble and follow behind, 1 step deep and 1 shallow. In the midst of his busy schedule, he even used a few dancing lights to illuminate the road, and finally climbed to the top of the mountain. In the open space at the top of the hill, stones half a man's height formed a large circle, about 10 meters in diameter. A bonfire was lit inside the circle, and a dozen men and women, with flowing robes, stood outside the circle, leaning on oak staffs. Seeing Gretel panting and following the elder, everyone was curious and paying attention. Elder Irwin did not introduce Gretel. He placed the person at one end of the circle and stepped inside. Under the firelight, the old man's white beard was fluttering, his wooden staff was leaning on the ground, and he gave a heavy meal. Today, we are gathered here to worship the great God of nature. Praise my God. In response to the elder's voice, everyone bowed their heads solemnly and prayed in unison. You are the protector of nature, the protector of forests and animals, you give life to all things and give the world abundance. Greet had memorized these prayers at least. Although he did not hold an oak staff, he lowered his head like the others and murmured a prayer. Every sentence is read in a decent manner, and even if I stumble occasionally, at least I won't be confused. While praying, I secretly looked around. The closer the people were to me, the younger they were, and the fewer green leaves embroidered on their robes. The further away the people were, the older they were, and the number of green leaves on their robes increased from 3 to 4 slices, up to 5 slices. "Oh, I am the youngest." Gretel lowered his head, recited a prayer carelessly, and looked at his robe. "I went out in a hurry today. I didn't even have time to change my clothes. I was still wearing a mage robe." "Very good. Not only is he the youngest, maybe he is also a husky who has blended into the pack of wolves." After he finished praying, the crowd had quieted down. Elder Irwin lifted the oak staff and pointed it sharply, and a green light fell on him. "Today, we have a new brother in the order. He is Gret Nordmark, Fred's son, mage apprentice, and the imparter of a new treatment method. Half a month ago, I brought you the map is from his handwriting." "What? It's him. Such a little guy." There was a stir in the crowd. The men and women were all asking questions, and a burly man had already rushed over, spitting foam and almost spraying it into Gretel's face. "Hello, my name is Alvin. How does the arterial blood come back from the veins after it goes out?" The momentum of his charge was so astonishing that Gretel ducked to the left and almost bumped into a red-haired beauty. The beautiful woman was tall and fit, with 3 red marks on the side of her face that looked like makeup or tattoos. She was mysterious and sexy. Seeing Greet staggering over, she grabbed her hold and smiled slightly, and Greet felt a fragrant breeze blowing directly onto his face. "Hello, my name is Joanna, handsome little brother. You said before that we rely on our brains to think about things, not our hearts. But, when I am sad, my heart really hurts." As if to strengthen her persuasion, she raised her hand and pressed hard on her chest. The towering breasts sank and then bounced up. Around the beautiful woman, 5 or 6 men stared wide-eyed and swallowed their saliva. Unfortunately, the experienced emergency room doctors had no response. Greet just glanced at it, turned away indifferently, and thought quickly. "Sad. Heartache. Judging from the way you are bouncing around and your body proportions are perfect, it doesn't look like you have a heart attack due to high blood fat or anything like that. As long as there is no organic disease or broken heart syndrome, pain is not a big problem. And, compared to beauties, there are still more problems and more pressure. Hello, my name is Anthony. Hey, why do you say that the thoughts in your head are transmitted by nerves? Then why is my heart still beating when I am clearly asleep? My name is William. Little Gretel, how on earth are we going to practice bone setting?" More than a dozen healers, who had been collecting problems for half a month, rushed over like a flash flood. Greet held his head and rushed behind Elder Irwin in 3 or 2 steps. Those people were still watching with eager eyes, and some of them rushed forward, as if they wanted to eat Gretel. There is only one elder. He can stop the front, but not the back. In desperation, he could only slap the wooden stick again and said loudly, "Don't mess around. Come one by one. Gretel, you say it first." Pause slightly. Gretel took this opportunity to rush out of the crowd in 3 steps at a time, climbed to a rock and shouted. How to practice bone joining. Practice with animals. Sheep. Dog. Rabbit. You can practice it all. There are so many injured animals. You won't break it? Gretel answered matter-of-factly. More than a dozen worshippers of the god of nature fell silent at the same time, and the oak staff in Elder Irwin's hand was deeply inserted into the soil. Inside and outside the stone circle, there was only the sound of heavy breathing and the rustling mountain wind blowing over the tops of the oak trees. After a while, the sexy beauty who asked the question before raised her voice. Harming innocent animals, but doing so violates our beliefs. What? Belief? What exactly is your belief? Didn't you agree to believe in the god of nature? It's not like I believe in Buddhism and is not allowed to kill animals. Why can't I even do animal experiments? Does that mean you can't dissect a corpse? This can't be done and that can't be done. How can you gain proficiency in surgery? Did I find the wrong person to link to? Wouldn't it be better to link to the temple of the god of war before? Gretel, the priest apprentice of the god of nature who sneaked in, relied entirely on rote memorization of teachings, and Nodmark looked confused. Thanks to Etienne Huixi for the reward of 1,500 starting coins. Thanks to Et stealing clothes. At Chu 9999999 for the 100 starting coins reward. It has disappeared from the new book list by 555. It may be that it has been 30 days since the book was released. You don't need to use rewards to help me get on the list anymore, it's useful. There are only more than 700 collections, crying, I can only wait and see whether this wave of recommendations can advance. Please everyone, please read along. Follow me every day. Please collect it. Please recommend. Please review the book. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 66. Gretel glared at the priests. The priests stared at him. More than a dozen people stood below, chattering and making noisy noises. One person stood above, clenching his fists and waving his arms. Don't look at the number of people, just look at the momentum, just like a leopard climbing on the tree, and a pack of wolves are blocking the tree, howling and trying to tear the leopard into pieces. Alas, it's still a young leopard. Can't beat it at all. Gretel compared his own force value with the opponent's force value, and sadly came to a conclusion. Ahem, everyone, be quiet. Elder Irwin had been watching the farce until now, and finally paused his oak staff and spoke out to stop it. Since he was older and had the highest rank as a priest, everyone gave him face and calmed down and stepped aside. Elder Irwin waved to Gretel and said pleasantly, Little Gretel, I have only taught you for a few days, and I haven't had time to tell you some details. We are servants of the God of nature, we respect nature, protect nature and be friends with nature, vegetation, and animals. Harm innocent people. Animals are against our beliefs. Ah. And this one? Didn't the God of nature tell me this? Oh, by the way, the divine enlightener, am a fake. Gretel shook off a cold sweat. He thought hard, carefully raised a finger and made a suggestion. So, instead of catching wild rabbits, you can raise them yourself. Gretel. Elder Irwin shouted. This kid is endless. If you want to cut up the rabbit so much, go to the necromancer. He tried his best to show a fierce look, but Gretel was unmoved and spread his hands. You can't catch wild ones, and you can't raise them yourself, then there is only one way. Elder, you bring hundreds of corpses, and I will dissect dozens of them by myself. I will probably be used to it. G.R.T. Why did I accept him as my disciple in the first place? He loves dissecting corpses so much, he is obviously a good necromancer. Elder Irwin gritted his teeth secretly. However, this time, Gretel had figured out the entire theory and looked at him without fear. What you are protecting is nature, right? It's the natural ecology, right? On the grassland, if there are too many sheep, they will eat up the grass, and the wolves will have more sheep to eat. When there are fewer sheep and the wolves have nothing to eat, they will starve to death. New pastures grow and more sheep are raised. Is this a balance, right? This truth is correct. Ecological balance, etc., is concise, and it indeed summarizes what they respect and want to protect. But I always feel that there is a trap behind. Elder Irwin frowned. What do you want to say? The sheep and rabbits raised by humans rarely affect the natural ecology, Greet asked confidently. Even if you raise a few more animals or kill a few more, the impact on nature will be much smaller than that of wild animals. In order to study healing techniques, killing a few animals for practice, how can it violate the principle of protecting nature and your beliefs? But most people still looked hesitant. When I asked about how to practice bone setting, the pastor named William asked loudly, "Even so, is it okay to hurt animals casually?" "Of course not," Greet replied confidently. Without waiting for William to refute, he asked first, "Can a servant of the God of nature kill animals?" Okay, Elder Irwin took over. He leaned on the oak staff and moved forward step by step. His silver beard shone in the light of the campfire. "We can kill animals for our own food, to hunt for the furs we wear, to protect people and eliminate threats, and such behavior is legitimate. However, those who kill animals, cut down trees or shrubs, and destroy nature in order to show off their force, for fun, or for all unnecessary reasons will surely lose the power given by the God of nature." He paused lightly. Greet immediately continued what he said and asked, "So do you think it's necessary to harm animals in order to practice your healing arts?" The elder hesitated slightly. Gretel didn't give him a chance anymore and continued, "I think it is necessary. First of all, healers must go through such practice in order to hone their skills. Secondly, we are not doing it for our own selfish interests. Finally, our harm to these animals is not uncontrolled, but it's about following strict guidelines." He took a step forward, stepped on the edge of the stone, and raised a hand. He stretched out his 5 fingers and, in full view of everyone, he bent the first finger. The first criterion: substitution. Substitute rabbit legs for live rabbits, rabbits for sheep, sheep for monkeys. In short, substitute insensible materials for live animals, and small animals for large animals. Under the light of the fire, Greet's eyes were full of joy and excitement. He continued to bend his second finger and talked. The second criterion is to reduce. Try to use fewer animals to get the same number of exercises, or use the same number of animals to get more exercises. In this way, although we cannot reduce the total number of injuries, we can at least injure them. Fewer animals. It sounds reasonable. The worshippers of the God of nature whispered. Several people wanted to refute, but in the face of such strict and systematic principles, they couldn't find anything to say. Greet looked solemn and lowered his last finger. The third principle is optimization. Treat them as kindly as possible to avoid or reduce the pain caused to them, such as anesthesia as much as possible before breaking the bones, or, provide suitable living conditions for the animals and let them try their best. Live better. After all, you still have to hurt them. Joanna, a beautiful pastor, took a step forward and retorted loudly. With an eagle chirp, she raised her arms high, and a goshawk flew and landed on her arms. Joanna stroked the goshawk's feathers, her face softened for a moment, and then became sharp again. So many reasons, so many rules, just to make yourself feel better. You're right, Greet nodded solemnly. He looked directly into Joanna's flaming eyes and slowly admitted. We break their bones, open their bellies, and pick out their spinal cords not to torture or kill. We know clearly that these animals are suffering on behalf of us humans, and on behalf of the patients we want to treat. Suffer. We are grateful for their dedication and remember their kindness. Joanna's expression slowly softened. On her arm, the goshawk chirped softly and gently rubbed her cheek with its beak. Gretel lowered his arms. He stood upright and bowed deeply to the audience below and to the animals that were about to be dissected. Finally, in order not to cause waste. After the dissection is completed, we can eat them without leaving any. Joanna was startled. There was a burst of laughter in the crowd, and even the goshawk on her arm flapped its wings in a funny way. On a stone not far away, the young man straightened up and raised his voice. The questions you ask are too complicated. It's very late today, let's talk about some simple, life-saving tips. It's best to finish it in an hour. I don't want to be locked up here for 7 years and teach you every day. Thanks to Katanchari for the 100 starting coins. Pushed up to the next day. Yesterday's collection increase was just at the point of promotion or not. I still ask for your support today. Take a look every day and don't keep it, it's really important to follow the data. Please add it to your collection, please recommend it, please review it, please give it to me. If you haven't thrown out your monthly pass yet, please give it to me. It is said that these data can help to advance. Of course the most important thing is to study. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 67. Heimlich Maneuver. CPR. As soon as these two first aid weapons were thrown out, the scene almost got out of control. Clergy, or healers, as Greet used to describe doctors in his previous life, who don't have a few human lives in their hands. Watching a patient die before he can be saved is something that everyone will remember for the rest of their lives, and everyone will remember it decades later. At that time, if I did this, I might be able to save people. Gretel was surrounded by people on the spot. Anthony, William, and even Joanna, the beautiful woman who came to question Gretel, all had their eyes bright and pushed forward desperately. Elder Irwin, relying on his high rank and strong fighting ability, grabbed the front row position, but was squeezed by the people behind him and almost couldn't stand. There is no choice but to use the staff. Ah! Elder, you are cheating. The rim of a bowl is as thick as a bowl, and snake-like vines emerge from the ground. One by one of the healers present, they were all wrapped around their waists by vines, hanging in the air like gourd dolls. With this lecture, Greed had maxed out his reputation in the sect, and was almost detained on the spot. That is to say, the religious order did not have a fixed temple, so he was able to escape and was sent back to the Mage Tower by Elder Irwin. Gretel, who was still frightened, refused to leave again and buried himself in the Wizard's Tower until Midsummer's Day. Learn magic and theology, read journals and write papers. It wasn't until Midsummer's Day that he climbed out of the Wizard's Tower and went to join Uncle Cullen's family. Celebrate the holidays. Have fun and play. Help Brother Raymond chase girls at the Midsummer Festival. Gretel always remembered that on the first day she went to the Wizard Tower, Aunt Eileen stayed up all night and made Brother Raymond's new clothes smaller for her to wear. And that dress was originally worn by Brother Raymond for Midsummer Festival. Gretel doesn't know how to look at sizes and doesn't dare to buy random clothes. He could only buy a piece of high-quality cotton and return it to Aunt Eileen and her family as soon as possible, and then, he would keep Aunt Eileen's friendship deeply in his heart. So you must go. You must perform well and help Brother Raymond catch the girl. Greed walked behind Aunt Eileen, holding Avril in one hand and looking around. The streets on Midsummer Festival are 100 times livelier and brighter than usual. Bright red, light yellow, sapphire blue, and all kinds of bright clothes can be seen on the street. The women all put on bright long skirts, solid colors, vertical stripes, florals. They usually only wear a coarse linen waistcoat, and even the young men who worked shirtless also wore fine linen or even cotton shirts. The color that the city has been saving for a year seems to be splashed out on Midsummer Day. Businessmen will not miss this opportunity. Especially the small vendors, they set up all their stalls, raised bright flags, and put out various types of things. Greed held Avril's hand and bought all the way, a fried fish, a flower head, a melon. They were all small things that could be bought for 1 or 2 coppers each. Avril held them in her hands and ate them all the way, smiling until her eyes turned into crescents. Aunt Eileen had to stop, it's too much. I bought food for my sister, Gretel responded with a smile. He turned around and bought another bunch of croquettes, stuffed them into Avril's hand, and asked softly, Avril, are you tired? Midsummer Festival is a traditional festival in the kingdom. It is usually held at the end of May, within 10 days after the summer harvest. Of course, it must be a sunny day. The city lord's palace usually holds grand celebrations, inviting local nobles, temples, magicians, etc. to celebrate together. In the square in front of the city lord's palace, there will even be circuses and jugglers specially invited. Of course, those who are qualified to attend the banquet at the city lord's mansion are also local prominent figures. A mage apprentice like Gretel, be good and let yourself play. So Gretel went to play. He took Avril shopping and eating all the way, until the little girl looked tired, and then he carefully sent her back. As soon as he turned around, he was pulled by Brother Raymond and turned into the dancing crowd. People all over the street were dancing. This common people's dance steps are very simple: men, women, stand one by one, holding hands to form a circle. In the warm and cheerful music, move forward, raise your hands, retreat, lower your hands, kick your legs, put them down, release your hands, and spin in a circle. Then the woman stands still, and the man moves one space in the counterclockwise direction, switches partners, and does it again. Greet was dizzy from dancing. Surrounded by long skirts that bloomed like flowers, the girl's flying braids would brush against his face from time to time, tickling his cheeks. Leave one circle and join another. Soon, Greet saw Brother Raymond holding a girl, and the two held hands and spun around. The girl was wearing a long, fiery red dress. She had a tall and fit figure, and her red hair was so intense that it seemed to be burning. She has a fair complexion and a pair of sparkling emerald eyes. Gretel noticed that Brother Raymond squeezed her hand quietly as she turned around. When the girl turned around again, her cheeks suddenly turned red. There's drama. The villain in Greet's heart has already raised his cheeks. After this round of dancing, it was time to change positions again. Raymond changed from the girl's left to the right. Greet stood to the girl's left in turn. As soon as he stood still, he heard Brother Raymond introduce. He is Gretel. Ah, he is Gretel, the girl was surprised. She looked at Gretel from head to feet, and then from feet to head. Her eyes were shining brightly, and she suddenly made a cry. Very handsome. That's right. Little Gretel is already a magician. Gretel. What is the relationship between magicians and handsome people? Just after chatting these two sentences, the music sounded again. Gretel had no choice but to dance along, moving forward, back, raising arms, kicking legs, and after completing a circle, changed partners again. This time, Brother Raymond stood still and refused to move no matter what. Wow! There was a burst of good-natured laughter in the circle. Brother Raymond's face was red, but he still held the girl's hand and refused to let go, and the girl had no intention of breaking away. Whistles were everywhere, people around clapped their hands and stamped their feet, shouting, "Come one! Come one!" This is about to change from a group dance to a duet dance. The accompanist also joined in the fun, and the music changed and became a little more lively. Raymond intertwined his right hand with the girl's fingers, put his left hand on her waist, and quickly led her in a circle. There was a loud sound of color all around. The flute player played harder, and the drum player played more cheerfully. Men and women, always in pairs, danced to the music. It seems that Brother Raymond has already figured it out. There is no need for him to be sandwiched in as an atmosphere group, he might turn into a light bulb at any time. Greet looked around for a while, then quietly stepped away. After dancing for such a long time, the food he just ate disappeared. He had to eat more. Hey, he had only visited half of the stalls on the street just now. Going shopping by yourself gives you more options than taking Avril with you. Gretel was not afraid of eating up his stomach. He took a skewer of barbecued meat in his left hand and a skewer of roasted birds in his right hand, making his mouth full of oil. As I was eating, I suddenly heard a huge commotion in front of me, followed by screaming. Help! Greet ran forward. Thanks to @screws for the 100 starting coins reward. We are testing the waters and promoting the PK period. Please come and watch it every day. It is very important to read the data. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, monthly votes, anything. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 68. Looking down from a high altitude, the colorful flow of people nodded not far ahead. Some people wanted to rush in, some wanted to run out, and more people were at a loss and stayed in place. It was so crowded. In the center of the crowd, screams, loud and low, kept coming. Gretel was furious. He stretched out his arms and pushed forward and to both sides. As he squeezed, he shouted, "I'm the doctor. I'm the healer. Let me in." Finally someone started to make way for him. 1, 2, 3. Gretel thanked him and squeezed in. Along the way, he heard the onlookers shouting and asking, "What happened? The platform collapsed. Why did the stage collapse? They threw candies down, and there were so many people grabbing them. Once they were crowded. The problem is serious. In such a large-scale event, the biggest fear is collapse accidents and stampede accidents." Gretel's heart was beating wildly. Squeezing into the inner circle, a quick glance revealed that it was more serious than he expected. In the center of the crowd, a half-collapsed wooden platform was tilted, and it could be seen that it was originally a stage, about a person's height. The steps at the edge of the stage had been trampled down, and people were falling on the ground near the steps. Some screamed loudly, some moaned in pain, some struggled to crawl out with support, and some were curled up on the ground, making no sound. Some people are struggling to rescue, while others are wandering around like headless chickens, rubbing their hands, not knowing what to do. Gretel even saw a young woman's right leg bent abnormally and bleeding. But she didn't care about her legs, held her hands on the ground, and crawled desperately toward the broken stage. Little Lila. Have kids? Are any children injured? Gretel's hair stood on end. Suddenly a figure rushed past him. Greet took a closer look and recognized Little John, the first priest he met in time. Little John had already rushed to the young woman's side, his palms glowing with white light, and he pressed against her bleeding injured leg. However, the young woman refused to let him receive treatment. She grabbed his wrist and dragged him towards the stage wreckage. "Child! My child! Save my child!" Little John was stunned. From all directions, several hands instantly clung to him, grabbing his ankles and tugging at the hem of his priest's robe. "Help me! Help me! Master Priest, save me, please dash! I'll give you money, I'll give you money, there are 5 silver coins in this purse, all for you, I also have dash." Little John was at a loss. He suddenly turned his head and saw Greet standing next to him, shouting at him with a tearful voice. "What should I do? I can't save so many people. I can save only one at most. You are too slow to save people like this. Listen to me." Gretel stepped to his side. Pulling Little John, he raised his other palm high, with white light flashing on his fingertips. "I am a healer. Listen to my command. Back up. Back up. Spread out." After shouting several times, the noise around him was finally suppressed. Greet looked around and pointed out a boy who looked smarter and a slightly familiar man with thick eyebrows. "You. Go find the city guards. You. Go to the Ares temple to find someone and tell them, I am Gretel Nordmark. Ask them to come and help, there are a lot of people injured here. The rest of the people should not mess around. The elderly and children should stay back. The others should work in pairs to carry out the wounded one by one and place them in a clean place. In times of chaos like this, some people stand up and give decisive orders, and others gradually obey." The young man and the thick-browed man ran away. Some of the other adult men and women looked at Little John, while others formed groups in twos and threes and began to carry people. Another shopkeeper came out and shouted, "My shop is right next to it, take it to my shop." "Very good." Greet nodded to him and pointed. Then he rushed to the wounded and checked the situation one by one. At the same time, he activated the zero-level magic of Mage Trick. "This leg is broken. 2 people hold one side and hold it up. Don't touch the leg." Snapped. With a wave of his hand, a bright yellow mark was dyed on his right shoulder, which was particularly conspicuous. The injury is serious, but the person is conscious and there is no immediate danger to his life. A yellow mark is placed to indicate delayed treatment. Hey, the wizard's trick is really useful. The level 0 magic can last up to 1 hour and can die within 1 cubic foot every 6 seconds. If it weren't for magic, where would he have found a lot of 4-color labels in a hurry? Okay, the 2 middle-aged men picked up the man and left. Greet quickly stopped. Wait. He stood still, lowered his head, concentrated, inhaled deeply, exhaled deeply, inhaled deeply, exhaled deeply again. After 6 seconds, he raised his hand for the second time and drew a long bright yellow line near the center of the injured person's broken leg. Find a strong piece of cloth and tie it around the line I marked. If possible, insert a wooden stick into it and tighten it firmly. Stop the bleeding. Okay. The man carrying the person answered loudly. The young pastor shouted at a volume no less than his own, "Why don't you treat him first?" "Prioritize first," Gretel shouted back. "Treat life-threatening injuries first, treat serious injuries later, wait for minor injuries first. Go quickly. You instruct them to carry people in, come over when you carry them in, and I will mark them." Good. Little John ran away. He even wore a priest's robe when he went out to play on Midsummer Festival. The people present did not recognize him, nor did they recognize the robe. Seeing that he was obeying orders, everyone naturally followed Gretel's instructions more and more. Soon another wounded person was dug out. Gretel knelt down and did a quick check. He passed out. "Let me take a look. There is a pulse and a heartbeat. Be careful." Another person comes over. 3 people lift it together, one supports the head and shoulders, one supports the buttocks, and one supports the legs, keeping in a straight line. 1, 2, 3, get up. Snapped. With a wave of his hand, a bright red mark was smeared on it. Unresponsive to the call, unconscious, with a pulse and breathing, this is the highest priority first aid category. They must be sent to the hospital immediately. Oh, there is no hospital now. When the sorting is completed, they must come over immediately and be ready for cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or if a priest arrives, give them priority for treatment. Put red marks on one, yellow on one, green and black on each. Leave a person next to each patient, waiting to help me. Gretel shouted to the volunteers helping to carry the people. After shouting, he lowered his head and immediately observed the next wounded person. "This, I'm not breathing, and my heart is not beating. I have no time to talk to you now. Please forgive me." Snapped. The black mark blurs upward. "We are too busy right now. Once the wounded are sorted and free to take action, we can then judge the situation to see if it is still worth rescuing. This, I can still get up on my own, go, 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 go and wait by myself." Snapped. Green mark sent. This is the category that needs to be treated last. Only when other injured people have been treated, or when the on-site treatment capacity is overflowed, can it be the turn of these lightly injured people. Of course, we still need to pay attention to the injury. Who knows what hidden pathophysiological changes are there, such as hypoxemia and metabolic acidosis. If you don't care about him, he will just sit and throw himself on the street. Greet ran back and forth, shouting. For a moment, everything around the stage was stirred up by him, with at least dozens of people running around under his command. Maintain order, move and transport the wounded, carry the collapsed stage. There is strength in numbers, and the accident scene that was like hell just now was quickly cleared by half. Alas, the list of increased collections has fallen by one place. I am sorry. I'm so afraid that my attempt to test the waters and promote PK will fail. Please help me, stop raising books and come and read them every day. Ask for collections, requests for recommendations, requests for book reviews, requests for monthly votes. Every interaction is important. They are all weighted. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 69. Little Greet, here we come. The shouts exploded. A small group of city guards rumbled over. The captain shouted from a distance. What do you want us to do? Gretel turned around and was overjoyed. The squad leader who asked the question was named Horn. He was a good friend of Uncle Karen, and Gretel was also familiar with him. He answered loudly. Maintain order. Report. Ask the priest to come over. Go to the military camp and get my surgery box. Have the rest of the people seen the wounded? Don't touch other injured people. I've done yellow markings to stop their bleeding. MD. Just say something is wrong. I am a city guard, although I am just a free earner now. Brother Raymond is also a city guard. During such a big festival, shouldn't everyone be on duty to maintain order? Why are everyone taking to the streets to play? How many priests are needed? Find as many as you can find. At $%. Captain Horn cursed, said you follow Little Greet's command, turned around and rushed out. He ran all the way, grabbed the first comrade he saw on the way, and shouted. Go to the God of War temple. Go to the Spring Water temple. Call for help. The stage on North Street collapsed, and dozens of people were killed or injured. In fact, the God of Nature is the most trustworthy. Captain Horn secretly regretted it. The servants of the God of Nature are kind and gentle, caring for the poor, and never refuse treatment because the poor cannot pay. But they don't have a fixed temple. At this moment, it is really difficult to find people on the streets. What about you, Horn? I'm going to the city lord's mansion. There was singing and dancing in the city lord's mansion. The lord of the city, Viscount Joan, held a banquet to celebrate Midsummer Festival, and most of the city's leading figures were present. The high priest of the temple of the goddess of spring, the bishop of the temple of the god of war, and even the usually elusive elders of the natural god religion are no exception. After all, they are operating in Heartland City, and the city lord's face is usually given. While they were singing and laughing, Captain Horn rushed in and went straight to the seats of several knights. Team, Captain. Something happened on North Street, dozens of people were killed or injured. What? Several knights starting from Captain Nolan were startled at the same time. North Street is one of the busiest areas in Heartland City. Among these knights, no one dares to say that their family members will not be there. Dozens of people were killed or injured. Even at the banquet in the city lord's palace, 2 knights moved and almost ran away. The city lord, Viscount Joan, also frowned and waved his hand. No need to sing, what's going on? Yes, the stage collapsed, there were so many people around, they were crowded together, and they were trampling on each other. Horn told the story quickly. As soon as he heard the first sentence, Elder Irwin had already stood up and walked down quickly. After finishing the second sentence, the bald bishop also stood up and asked as he walked. Who's in charge over there? It's little Gretel. Captain Horn blurted out an answer and hurriedly stopped. Little Gretel has a good relationship with the temple of the god of war, so if we talk privately, it doesn't matter, but there are many people in the city lord's palace, and if someone is dissatisfied with little Greet, if someone says anything more at this time, it will cause trouble for him. Gret Nordmark. Sure enough, the high priest of the spring goddess temple frowned and asked. Without waiting for Captain Horn to answer, he had already explained to the city lord, I know this little guy. He has only mastered the healing technique for more than a month. He is in charge of the scene dash. The implication is that I am not optimistic. With 20 or 30 wounded people, what use is a priest's apprentice? Cure the little fellow of Baron Knight, city lord Joan frowned. Why is he everywhere? Gretel Nordmark. Master Gearman raised his eyebrows and remained silent. Instead, he looked up, and an old man with a grey beard laughed, turned his head and asked him. That little guy? Is he the one you mentioned, the newly promoted mage apprentice, whom the elders of the natural god religion accepted as their apprentice? Interesting. Check it out. A group of noble people poured out of the city lord's palace. Behind the crowd, Captain Nolan faced his knights with a serious expression. Flynn, take all your people and take a small road to North Street. Little Gretel can't hold it alone, he needs help. Yes. Scylla, you stay here and guard the city lord's mansion. Others, gather all your hands. Tell them that something has happened, stop playing, and come to patrol the streets for me. There has been an incident on North Street, and there must be no more trouble in other places. Yes. Be careful. If something happens on the street, and the city lord investigates it, the first unlucky person will be our city guards. If we lose a few people, our responsibility will be lighter. Little Greet is doing us a favor. People who go to North Street all obey Little Greet's command. He gives what he wants and who he wants. Ask for money, give money. If you don't have enough, put it on first and ask me for it later. Yes. A group of city guards ran out with a roar. On North Street, Gretel sorted the wounded as quickly as possible, sorted them into categories, and marked them. When the last injured person was carried away, Gretel turned around and rushed into the store that was converted into a shelter without stopping. The sunny environment suddenly turned into darkness. Gretel suddenly stopped. 29 wounded. He is a doctor, and he brings with him a priest apprentice whose healing capacity is limited and only slightly better than nothing. There were ordinary people around him. Not to mention cardiopulmonary resuscitation, they even taught me how to bandage and stop bleeding. If it were in the previous life, at this moment, the entire emergency department would have been in action. Support departments such as internal medicine, external medicine, thoracic surgery, orthopedics, and hematology and laboratory testing were already in a hurry, rushing down from their respective floors to join in the rescue. But now, at this moment, the lives of so many people. He can only rely on himself. Gretel raised his head and gave himself a second to miss the hospital where he worked. He missed the ubiquitous smell of disinfectant. Although it is strong and sometimes choking, as long as you can smell the smell, it means that the disinfection environment of the hospital is reassuring. He missed the heart monitor alarms. Although the sound comes one after another, each time it rings, the doctor's blood pressure immediately rises by 20 mmHg, but no matter what, these instruments are monitoring the patient's condition. He missed the shrewd head nurse. Although she has a sharp tongue and dares to scold everyone from the nurse to the deputy director, when it comes to emergency rescue, she is also the one who vigorously directs the nurses, pushing instruments, preparing medicines, and delivering equipment, without any delay. Son. He even misses the X-ray machine. Yes, he came up with a substitute, but so what? As for things that can provide enough light source, so far, he has only found Elder Irwin's oak staff. But, now. Looking to the left, Little John looked at him eagerly, looking to the right, Two city guards stood upright, waiting for his order. He is the only one who can make on-the-spot decisions, issue orders, and perform complex medical operations. One person. 29 lives. Thanks to @origami and gart for the 100 starting coins. I am writing the KPI form today. I am writing the KPI form for the Magic Council's assessment of the Mage Tower. While writing, I am doubting life. What am I trying to do? Why should I torture myself with KPIs? However, collections, recommendations, book reviews, and follow-up reading are the KPIs of writers. Don't keep it, everyone. Help me, let me test the waters and push PK to win. Please. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 70. One person, facing 29 wounded people. 2 of the black marks have lost breathing and heartbeat, 3 red marks have a heartbeat, breathing, and are in a coma and must be rescued immediately. 5 yellow marks are not life-threatening, but they must be treated as soon as possible. He needs help. Not the kind of helper that the god of war temple improvised for an operation. He needs internal medicine, surgery, anesthesia, testing, imaging, nurses, in short, a team with complete medical education. Gretel really wished he could cast a large-scale healing spell right away. As soon as the light rain fell, everyone immediately recovered and became alive and kicking. However, not to mention that he had only seen this thing in online articles, even if it really existed in this world, he was not at a high enough level to release it. So what should I do now? What should we do to live up to the profession of doctor and save the most patients? Gretel took a deep breath, and then another. Years of emergency rescue experience allowed him to quickly calm down and look around. His gaze shifted from the red area where the injured person was unconscious, to the yellow area where he was moaning and screaming, and then to the black area where he might still be able to be saved, but maybe he was no longer worth saving. In a daze, the whole person seemed to split into 2 halves. Half concerned and compassionate, wanting to save all patients at all costs. The other half was calm and detached, overlooking the entire scene, indifferently assessing the rescue sequence and probability of success. Who to rescue? Who to give up? Save lives first, then treat illnesses. Emergency doctors never work alone and are never lone heroes. Hanging the patient's life, maintaining the patient's vital signs, delaying, until the moment the reinforcements arrive. In the hospital, it is colleagues from other departments. Here, it is the priests of various temples. Among the 29 wounded, who is the most dangerous? Who will die immediately without resuscitation, and who can delay it for at least an hour even if he leaves it alone? Gretel immediately made up his mind. He walked quickly inside, pointing to the wounded in the green zone as he walked. Give them each a glass of hot water, add some sugar, some salt, sit there and drink, don't move around. Tell them the priest will be here soon. I am coming. As soon as he finished speaking, a priest bumped in. Gretel raised his eyes and saw that he recognized the person who came. He was a priest apprentice from the temple of the god of war. He was almost as capable as Little John. Don't laugh at him. He had also learned to deliver equipment for Gretel. The little priest looked around and immediately ran over. Gretel, what am I doing? You and John go to the yellow zone, Greet shouted back, look at the wounded over there. If the bleeding has not stopped, help them stop the bleeding immediately. I taught you how to stop the bleeding. Good. The little priest turned and left. Greet shouted behind him, where are the others? I don't know. I met him on the street. So I don't know how long it will take for the large army to reach the battlefield. Gretel shrugged, walked quickly through the yellow zone, and checked to see if the bleeding had been stopped. Fortunately, the soldiers of the city guard had no medical skills, but they still carried out the orders in place. Tourniquets were tied wherever he drew lines. Even more fortunately, the store that took in the injured happened to be a restaurant, and the owner rushed into the kitchen to heat hot water. In this case, if there is an operation later, the instruments can at least be cooked, Greed thought as he walked straight to the red zone. There were only 3 casualties in the red zone. One is a young man who suffered a bloody head injury, but now it seems that there is no longer a large amount of continuous bleeding, and there are no obvious injuries on his body. The second one was a middle-aged woman with a pale face, huddled up in a ball, with many footprints on her body, especially on her chest and abdomen. The third one was an old man, his legs were broken in many places, and he was lying in a pool of blood, dying. With just one glance, the former deputy chief physician of the emergency department already had a corresponding judgment in his mind. For young men, head injury is highly suspected. Pay attention to open airway and pay attention to vital signs. For a middle-aged woman who is highly suspected of severe internal organ damage, it is recommended to undergo abdominal puncture, ultrasound, CT, and if necessary, laparotomio. These conditions are not available, excuse me. For an elderly man, it is highly suspected that the fracture caused the rupture of a large blood vessel. It is recommended to stop the bleeding immediately. Greet glanced at it and immediately prioritized. Craniocerebral injuries and abdominal injuries cannot be solved by the existing medical power. We can only hope that a stronger priest may have a solution. As for aortic bleeding, he is good at handling it. He first looked at the volunteers beside the young man. Let his head turn to one side, and be careful to clean it up in time if he vomits, so as not to choke it in his throat. Open his mouth to clean it up if necessary. Do you understand? The volunteer nodded. Gretel continued to glance at the middle-aged woman without saying a word, then he looked at the old man, hurriedly approached, and at the same time raised his voice. Bring a sharp knife. The thinner, the better, the faster, the better. Coming. Immediately a city guard came over with a knife. Greet didn't care whether it was sterilized or not, and cut open the fractured wound with a knife. Ah! The old man screamed. Gretel frowned. Severe pain would cause adrenaline to surge, and blood pressure would rise sharply, causing cardiac arrest, cerebral hemorrhage, and a series of complications. Wouldn't it be so unlucky? There's nothing you can do about it if you're unlucky. There is no anesthetic, no magic, or magic for anesthesia, this is the only way. Gretel gritted his teeth and sped up, cutting out the severed end of the blood vessel. Then, a healing spell was thrown over. There are no conditions for suturing. If it is clamped with the hands of a mage, he will not have so much time to look at it. Can only throw treatment. Let the blood vessels close on their own first, and think about the rest later when the bones are set. This method is quite deviant from the perspective of a surgeon or a priest. Greet could no longer think about it, nothing was more important than human life. The sharp knife flew under his hand, and he processed several large blood vessels in succession. There was a bang outside the door, and 2 more priests ran in. Little Greet. How can I help? One of the visitors was wearing a red and yellow vertical skirt, the other was wearing a light brown shirt, and both had garlands on their heads. They were a pair of attendants of the god of nature. Gretel's eyes lit up. Joanna. Anthony. You're so good here. Greet had met these 2 people at the party on the night of the new moon. The male is level 3 and the female is level 4, both are more than 1 level higher than him. Gretel shouted. Joanna. Where is your eagle? Can you send someone out to call for help? We need priests. Many priests. After calling, look at the 2 black marks. If they are all dead, come and help. Good. Joanna turned and left. As he walked, he tore off a piece of red cloth from his skirt. For a moment, an eagle screamed outside. Joanna tied the red cloth on the eagle's talons and touched the goshawk feathers. Good boy, fly low. Hover in the air, let everyone see it, and then show them the way. It's up to you to bring everyone here. She earnestly warned her companions that Anthony had rushed to the black area to observe the injured. After a moment he shouted, "The little girl is still alive." After a moment, he followed, "The other one is still alive too. Just hang on." "I'll come right away," Gretel shouted back. He speeded up the treatment of the old man's injuries. There were hurried steps outside the door, and 3 more priests ran in. "Where are the injured people? What do you want us to do?" "Thanks to my beloved Yabusha for the reward of 1,000 starting coins. It's the last day of the May Day holiday. Are you still watching? There are many interesting plots behind. Data is very important during the testing period. Please continue to ask for support. Please don't keep books, come and read them every day. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, and all kinds of things.